11,600 years ago, in the dry hills of southeastern Turkey, something impossible rose from the earth. Massive T-shaped pillars stood tall, some reaching over 5.5 meters and weighing 50 tons. These stones were carved with incredible precision. They were set up in perfect alignment with the stars. The people who built this, according to everything historians believe, were nomadic hunter-gatherers. They had no metal tools, they had no agriculture, they had no written language. They had no business building anything more lasting than a campfire. This site challenges everything we thought we knew about human history. What could these people have built, and how? In 1994, a shepherd found something sticking out of the ground near Schänlorfa. He reported it. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt started digging the next year. What he uncovered would take up the rest of his life. It would also completely change what archaeology understood about where human civilization began. The site is called Göbekli Tepe, which means Hill of the Navel in Turkish. It sits high on a limestone plateau, visible for miles. Archaeologists have found at least 20 stone circles there. Each one has huge T-shaped limestone monoliths. They are arranged in carefully planned rings. These aren't rough stones. They are precisely carved pillars. Their shapes are geometrically consistent. Some are over 5.5 meters tall. Some weigh 50 tons. Intricate carvings cover them. These reliefs show animals in vivid, dynamic detail. Foxes, lions, vultures, scorpions, snakes, bulls all appear. Geometric patterns of interlocking shapes are there too. Abstract symbols remain a mystery even after 30 years of study. On the largest central pillars, carved arms run down the sides. Hands meet at the front. These pillars are not just abstract monuments. They are human figures. The standard story, the one taught in universities, goes like this. Nomadic hunter-gatherers gathered on this hilltop. Maybe religious ideas brought them there. They used stone tools to cut these massive limestone pillars from nearby rock. Then they moved them. They set them up in those precise circles. They kept the site going for centuries, adding new enclosures. Then, around 8000 BCE, they deliberately buried the whole complex. They used thousands of tons of dirt carefully placed. This preserved it perfectly from modern discovery. The conventional story about Göbekli Tepe has one big problem. The engineering just doesn't work. Even today, moving and raising a 50-ton carved stone pillar is a huge task. It demands careful planning, heavy machinery, and real expertise. Now, take away that machinery. Remove metal cutting tools. Get rid of wheeled vehicles. Forget domesticated animals for hauling. What you have left is only human muscle. You have stone tools. You have whatever wood and rope technology people had back then. Experimental archaeology has tried to copy what happened at Göbekli Tepe. They used only tools and methods from that time. Teams have managed to shape basic forms in limestone. They used stone hammers and antler picks. They moved small weights with sledges and rollers, but they have never come close to the surface finish. They can't match the geometric precision. They can't recreate the detailed carvings on the original pillars. The difference between what stone tools can actually do and what we see at Göbekli Tepe is not small. It is a chasm. This construction technique is just the start of what doesn't fit. When Grok AI got all the data from 30 years of research on this site, the engineering anomaly was the least surprising thing it found. The AI faced a mountain of data. Researchers in 2026 put together the most complete data set ever created for one dig site. This included every three-dimensional scan of Göbekli Tepe's pillars and enclosures, and every ground-penetrating radar survey of the land around it. Every astronomical analysis of the site's layouts, every list of carved symbols, every geology report, every comparison linking Göbekli Tepe to other sites in the area. 30 years of intense work from dozens of teams, all from many different fields. Grok's neural networks received all this information. The instructions were clear. Analyze all Göbekli Tepe data, find patterns across different areas of study, spot connections human experts might have missed. They often miss things because they stay inside their own academic fields. Finally, figure out what knowledge the builders wanted to keep safe in stone. What Grok gave back was not just an archaeological guess. It completely changed what Göbekli Tepe actually is. The AI started with the carved symbols on the T-shaped pillars. For 3 decades, archaeologists had listed these images. They argued about what they meant. No one agreed. Some said they were just decorations. Others thought they had religious meaning. The symbols stayed a mystery. People mostly saw them as art whose message was lost to time. Grok did not see art. It saw a system. The AI's pattern recognition found about 47 different symbol types. These symbols spread across the enclosures in ways that could not be random. The symbols do not just pop up anywhere. They appear in specific groups. They are in certain spots. Their numbers change in a regular way across different pillar locations and enclosure directions. Grok looked at which symbols appeared together. It saw which ones appeared alone. It checked which ones matched specific sky alignments. The AI then found something 3 decades of human work had completely missed. It was a grammatical structure. The symbols were not just decoration. They formed a proto-writing system. This was a language for encoding specific information. A computational linguist reviewed the AI's findings. She said the way the symbols were spread showed patterns. These patterns fit with sending meaning, not just artistic expression. What Grok found, she concluded, had the marks of deliberate information encoding. This was a communication system. It was designed to send specific data. The AI then cross-referenced these symbols with completely different data sets. It looked at astronomical databases, geological records, and climate information. Specifically, it focused on the period around 9,600 BCE, when Göbekli Tepe's main structures were built. Human researchers had missed these connections for 3 decades. Finding them required processing archaeology, astronomy, geology, and linguistics all at once. No single academic field does that. Grok did. Specific animal symbols on the pillars matched constellations. These were the constellations as they appeared in the sky over southeastern Turkey 11,600 years ago. Certain geometric patterns corresponded to the movements of the sun and moon. Even abstract symbols lined up with known geological and climate events from that same time. These carvings are not myths. They are not just decorations. They are a precise record of a specific historical period. Geological and climate evidence confirms this period saw massive environmental upheaval. Grok found something even more profound within that record. The symbols do not just record what happened, they encode patterns, they describe recurring cycles. The builders understood these events were not isolated incidents. They returned predictably, tied to celestial mechanics that could be tracked and measured. This was not a temple. It was not a monument to gods or kings. This was a library. And the knowledge it was built to preserve was a warning. Among all the carved pillars at Göbekli Tepe, one stands out. It has sparked more debate and more conflicting ideas than any other. Archaeologists call it Pillar 4-3. Most researchers know it as the vulture stone. It is covered in carvings that are hard to explain. A vulture with a wing spread out, a scorpion, a crane. Other animals are arranged all over the stone, geometric symbols including circles, a clear disc, and abstract shapes. People have argued about what these mean since the pillar was first dug up. For decades, this debate went nowhere. Some thought it was mythology. Others said the images were just symbols, representing tribal or religious ideas with no real meaning. Then, in 2017, researcher Martin Sweatman published an analysis. He suggested the pillar showed a specific comet impact around 10,950 BCE. He said the animal figures marked constellations. This was a big idea. The archaeological world met it with a lot of doubt. Grok's analysis of Pillar 43 went much further than Sweatman's idea. The AI did not look at the pillar's images by themselves. It compared every carved element. It checked astronomical position databases going back thousands of years. It looked at geological event records. It used climate data. It even checked impact crater databases. What it found was not just one layer of meaning. It found many layers of information, all packed into one carved surface. The animal figures do represent constellations. They show where those constellations were in the summer solstice sky above Göbekli Tepe around 10,900 BCE. This is not an estimate. When Grok recreated the exact night sky for that date and location, it matched the carvings perfectly. The geometric symbols hold numbers. They use a counting system based on how the carved elements are placed. Grok found this system was used on many pillars. And the big circle, the disk that researchers thought was the sun, means something else entirely. It marks a specific event in the sky. It shows either a supernova or a very bright comet coming in. When Grok put all this together, the date on Pillar 43 matched exactly with the start of the Younger Dryas. This was a time when comet fragments hit Earth. Independent science confirms this. It caused huge climate change, killed off many large animals, and devastated people worldwide. The start of a 1,000-year climate disaster was carved into limestone by people who were there when it began. An astrophysicist looked at Grok's star calculations. He called the precision extraordinary. The positions of stars, the sun, and the timing of events all match what independent geological and astronomical records show for that period. The chance of this being a coincidence is less than 1 in 50,000. This is not an accident. This is careful record-keeping by people who saw terrible things happen. They knew exactly what they were writing down. Pillar 43 is not mythology. It is not religious art. It is a date stamp carved in stone. It records the exact moment disaster hit human civilization 11,000 years ago. If this kind of groundbreaking discovery fascinates you, subscribe. We are just beginning to unlock the secrets of Göbekli Tepe. The discovery that these builders could record celestial events with such precision changed everything. It meant the question was no longer if they were sophisticated. It became how sophisticated and where that knowledge even came from. Grok found its answers by looking at the entire site. The AI didn't see 20 separate buildings. It saw them as one unified system. Each enclosure was part of an integrated information network. Each part held a different category of knowledge the builders wanted to preserve. This organization was clear and measurable. Enclosures with a lot of serpent carvings, for example, grouped together. Their alignments matched equinox events. Enclosures with fox imagery showed different alignments. These pointed to specific star positions. The vulture enclosure, the one with Pillar 43, aligned with the solstices. Different parts of the site held different kinds of information. Astronomy, calendars, geology, climate patterns. All were encoded in separate structures, but they connected through the shared symbolic language Grok had identified across the whole site. Göbekli Tepe was not a temple. It was a library with dedicated wings for different subjects. But the most unsettling pattern Grok found across these 20 enclosures wasn't about the encoded knowledge. It was about how that encoding changed over time. The precision declined. The oldest enclosures, the earliest buildings at the site, showed the highest astronomical accuracy. Grok measured their alignments against optimal celestial positions. The average error was just 0.4 degrees. Enclosures from the Middle Period, built centuries later, showed deviations of 1.2 degrees. The newest enclosures were off by an average of 2.8 degrees. As the site grew, the astronomical knowledge used to build it degraded. This happened measurably, consistently, across generations. The physical construction followed the same pattern. Pillars got smaller over time. Carved details became shallower. Symbolic systems, complex in the earliest enclosures, grew simpler and less precise in later phases. The oldest parts of Göbekli Tepe were the peak of its achievement. Everything built after that showed a slow, measurable decline from that peak. This is the opposite of how technology usually works. Knowledge builds up, precision improves, techniques get better. Every model of human progress assumes later means better. At Göbekli Tepe, later means worse. The builders weren't getting better as they worked. They were losing something. The knowledge they tried to carve into stone was slipping away from them even as they built the structures to save it. Grok's conclusion from this pattern was clear and disturbing. The builders of Göbekli Tepe didn't invent this advanced astronomical and engineering knowledge. They inherited it. They arrived at that hilltop, already having sophisticated skills they didn't develop themselves. Skills they struggled to keep and pass on, and they failed measurably, generation after generation. Then, ground-penetrating radar scans revealed something else entirely. Beneath the enclosures visible today, deeper layers of construction exist. These older structures share the same symbolic language as the T-pillars, but their architectural style is different. Early surveys show these buried layers might be centuries, even millennia older than the famous T-pillar circles. This pushes the site's true beginning back to 12,000 BCE or earlier. Göbekli Tepe may not be the starting point of this knowledge preservation project. It might be its middle. The structures we see were built as the culmination of a tradition already ancient. This means the knowledge the builders tried to save was even older. Whatever catastrophe stopped its spread had been happening for longer than anyone had imagined. The question of who built Göbekli Tepe cannot be separated from how it was built. Grok's analysis of the physical construction challenged every conventional idea. The AI looked at high-resolution images of the T-shaped pillars. It analyzed tool marks, surface details, and the geometric exactness across dozens of them. This data did not match the standard archaeological story of how Stone Age people worked stone. That story says they chipped away material by hitting stone against stone. It also mentions abrasive techniques common in Neolithic toolkits. But the surfaces of Göbekli Tepe's pillars tell a different story. Some surfaces show marks from long grinding and polishing. This would need controlled, constant rubbing with harder materials over long periods. Other surfaces have straight-cut marks. These look like sawing motions. They are consistent in depth and do not change when crossing harder parts of the same stone. This is a signature of advanced cutting. The geometric precision of the T-shapes is also striking. Across dozens of pillars, it stays consistent within 2 to 3%. This suggests either standardized physical templates or systematic measuring. We have no proof either existed in Neolithic Turkey. Experimental archaeology has tried to copy Göbekli Tepe's stonework using only tools from that time. The results consistently fall short. Basic shapes can be made with stone hammers and antler picks, but the surface finish, the exact geometry, and the detailed carving on 50-ton pillars cannot be replicated. The difference between what we can do with ancient tools and what they actually built is fundamental. Then the ground-penetrating radar found something else in the structural engineering. The AI analyzed how the enclosures were designed. It looked at pillar placement, wall construction, and how all the parts fit together. It found engineering principles that modern architects use for earthquake resistance. The enclosures are in an area prone to earthquakes. They have survived for over 11,000 years. That survival was not luck. The pillars are not just stuck in bedrock. They have small gaps between them. These gaps allow movement during an earthquake without breaking the whole structure. The material around the pillars is also carefully layered. Different sized stones create a flexible base. This base can absorb shock instead of passing it through. These are not the signs of structures built by chance. They show builders understood, through experience or theory, how buildings fail in earthquakes. They knew how to prevent it. Modern earthquake engineering formalized these principles in the 20th century. Göbekli Tepe uses similar principles 11,600 years ago. A structural engineer specializing in ancient buildings reviewed Grok's findings. The implication was clear: you do not build earthquake-resistant structures by accident. This skill needs systematic engineering knowledge. It comes from either a long history of building or from knowledge passed down. Neither option fits what we think Neolithic hunter-gatherers could do. There was also the burial itself. Grok analyzed the fill material used to deliberately cover the site around 8000 BCE. It found no signs of people simply walking away. Larger stones were placed specifically to protect carved surfaces. Spaces were kept open around important pillars to stop them from crushing. Layers of dirt and rock were put down to help with drainage. This also prevented moisture from building up, which would damage the limestone over thousands of years. The people who buried Göbekli Tepe understood preservation engineering. They were not abandoning something finished. They were protecting something they could no longer maintain. They were sealing a message they trusted the future would eventually read. Göbekli Tepe did not stand alone. Grok expanded its analysis beyond the main site. It looked at 12 other massive stone complexes in the area. What it found was not a group of independent local monuments. It was something far bigger. Sites like Karahan Tepe, Harbetsuvan, and Sefer Tepe shared symbolic systems. They used similar construction methods and astronomical alignments. This couldn't be just luck or separate development. They formed a network. It was a coordinated system for preserving knowledge. This network stretched 200 kilometers. It was maintained for 1,500 years. All these sites were built around the same time. They encoded similar information, and all of them were eventually buried with the same careful planning. This wasn't one community's project. It was a regional program. The level of organization needed to keep this network going shatters another common idea about these builders. Grok calculated the logistics. It figured out the workforce needed to quarry, move, and set up these monuments. It estimated the resources required to feed and coordinate that workforce. It calculated the communication and planning necessary to maintain consistent symbols and astronomical alignments across sites spread far apart. These calculations do not describe a loose group of wandering bands who sometimes met on sacred hilltops. They describe a population base and an organizational structure. This structure was like early state-level societies. But conventional history says such societies appeared 5,000 years after Göbekli Tepe was buried. So either that timeline is wrong, or this social complexity existed in a way that left minimal lasting proof. Maybe it focused on movement instead of fixed cities. GPR found something more. It detected a pattern in the symbols that reached far beyond the local region. Specific carvings from Göbekli Tepe, the H symbols, certain serpent designs, unique geometric shapes started showing up in other places. These weren't just a few miles away. They appeared at sites hundreds, even thousands of kilometers distant. You find them in Çatalhöyük in central Turkey. They pop up in Neolithic settlements across the Levant, even in locations in North Africa. This spread wasn't random. It formed what archaeologists call a symbol horizon. This means a shared set of symbols used over a huge area. It's a range far bigger than what normal trade or local interactions would create. This symbol horizon also matched something else. It lined up perfectly in time with the Younger Dryas. That was the period of massive climate change that Pillar 43 recorded so precisely. Grok's algorithms flagged a direct question. It's a question with no easy answer. Could this wide distribution mean survivors of a huge disaster moved across regions? Did they carry their knowledge, their symbols, with them? Could Göbekli Tepe be just one point in a bigger network, a worldwide effort to save knowledge? One that happened in many places at once, by people dealing with the same global catastrophe? The way Grok found these cycles encoded made this idea even more unsettling. The builders weren't just recording one disaster. They were embedding the knowledge that these kinds of events happen again. They recur. The 25,920-year precession cycle showed up. It was hidden in how the enclosures were laid out. Shorter cycles, linked to the sun's activity, were in the placement of the pillars. The astronomical knowledge at Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a history book. It was a forecast. The builders understood that the disaster they had seen, or learned about from others, would return, and they built the site with that in mind. A geophysicist looked at Grok's findings. He confirmed that the astronomical cycles were real. We can measure them today. Precession, changes in Earth's orbit, solar cycles, they all tie into climate shifts. They can also affect the chances of impact events. We don't know if the builders figured this out themselves, watching the sky for generations, or if they got this knowledge from an even older source. But the monument itself tracks these cycles. That's not just a guess, it is a measurement. Who built Göbekli Tepe? Grok cannot give a name. What it can give is a profile built from 30 years of evidence. These were people who understood sophisticated astronomy. They had systematic engineering knowledge. They spoke a symbolic language that could carry complex information across thousands of years. These builders had capabilities our timeline says should not have existed for thousands of years more. They either developed them or inherited them. They knew a catastrophe had come before. They understood with terrible clarity that it would come again. The pillars still stand on that Turkish plateau. The carvings are still visible. Their alignments are still measurable. The encoded warnings are still readable by anyone with the right technology. The builders chose stone because stone lasts. They chose symbols because symbols can be decoded without a shared spoken language. They chose astronomical alignments because the sky never changes. They built a message specifically designed to survive the collapse of everything else. Grok has now processed 30 years of data. It pulled from archaeology, astronomy, geology, and engineering all at once. What it found is not speculation. It is pattern recognition applied to measurable evidence. The pattern is unambiguous. Either Neolithic hunter-gatherers achieved things our entire model of human development cannot explain, or they inherited those capabilities from a civilization our history books have not yet acknowledged. The stones waited 11,000 years for someone to read them. We finally can. 11,600 years ago, in the dry hills of southeastern Turkey, someone built something that should not exist. This structure is now revealed as a sophisticated predictive library, a message from a lost civilization. Göbekli Tepe forces a choice. Either we completely rethink how capable early humans were, or we admit a lost, advanced civilization existed long before our history books say it should have.